9 straight wins, a team on fire, and everything seemed perfect. Until now, the Boston Celtics are facing a serious crisis, and the timing couldn't be worse. 4 of the 5 starters are injured. What seemed like just a strategic rest period might actually be the first sign of a much bigger problem. Jaylen Brown, Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, and Al Horford could miss the game against the Miami Heat. But the question no one is asking is this just precaution or a sign that the Celtics might be falling apart at the worst possible moment? And if it's the latter, does this team have the emotional and technical structure to handle it? If things get worse, the dream of back-to-back championships could be in jeopardy. And beyond that, is this roster really as deep as people believed? Or will these absences expose weaknesses that were hidden by the sheer talent of the starters? Let's break it all down. Are these injuries really minor? Or is there more to the story? At first glance, the medical report might seem harmless. No major injury has been officially announced. But let's look at the details more closely. Jaylen Brown has been dealing with knee pain for weeks. Jrue Holiday has a shoulder issue. Porzingis is still recovering from an illness. And Horford is dealing with a finger injury. Now, stop and think. This is the point in the season when teams want to be at their physical peak. If the Celtics are just being cautious, it makes sense better to rest now than take unnecessary risks. But what if there's more? What if these injuries are more serious than the team is publicly admitting? Let's not forget that the Celtics have a history of being secretive with injuries. In the past, players like Robert Williams and Gordon Hayward were rushed back before they were truly ready, with disastrous consequences. Are we about to see history repeat itself? On top of that, fatigue is a real concern. Boston has been playing at a high level all season, and despite a deeper roster, the rotations have been tight. If this team is already struggling physically now, what does that mean for the playoffs? With half the starting lineup sidelined, all the responsibility falls on Jason Tatum and Derek White. They're both elite players, but here's the problem. The Miami Heat know how to exploit weaknesses. Eric Spoelstra's team thrives on physicality, relentless pressure, and defensive intensity. Remember what happened in the 2023 playoffs? The Heat completely dismantled a mentally fragile Celtics team that couldn't respond when the game got tough. If Boston enters this game shorthanded and loses, the psychological impact could be far worse than just a single defeat in the standings. Confidence could plummet at the worst possible time, and the worst-case scenario begins to take shape. Opponents start to smell blood. Can the Boston Celtics still be considered the clear favorites for the title? Or are these injuries just the beginning of a collapse that no one saw coming? Forget the technical side for a moment. What separates champions from talented teams that fall short is simple: mentality. This roster has shown time and time again that it can be psychologically vulnerable. The Celtics have a history of stumbling in decisive moments. In 2022, they stormed through the playoffs like an unstoppable force, only to collapse due to mental fatigue and costly mistakes in the finals against the Golden State Warriors. Now, the risk is that this injury crisis turns into a psychological problem. What if the losses start piling up? What if players aren't fully healthy by the time the playoffs arrive? Will this team have the maturity to handle it? Or will we once again see a squad with no answers when the pressure is at its highest? What happens when your best player starts feeling pain at the most crucial moment of the season? The Boston Celtics are gearing up for another title run, but an unexpected problem could throw everything off course. Jaylen Brown, last season's Finals MVP, just missed a game due to a knee issue. But hold on, this isn't just a minor discomfort. Brown himself admitted that this injury might linger for the rest of the season. So now what? Is the dream of back-to-back championships in jeopardy? Is the Celtics organization hiding something about the severity of the situation? Or are we underestimating the impact of this injury? Let's break it all down. What's really going on? With Brown's knee, officially, the medical report describes a posterior impingement in the right knee. But what does that really mean? Simply put, it's an inflammation that can cause pain and limit movement, especially in explosive plays. In other words, exactly what Jaylen Brown does best. And here's the real issue. This injury didn't just appear overnight. Brown has been dealing with discomfort for a while, and if it worsens, it could directly impact his performance in the playoffs. We're not talking about just any player. We're talking about the reigning Finals MVP and athlete whose game is built on his athleticism and ability to impact both ends of the floor. Want a concerning stat? Players who enter the playoffs with lingering injuries see their offensive efficiency drop by about 20%. Remember what happened to Joel Embiid last year? He went in banged up, tried to push through the pain, and his team paid the price. If Brown isn't 100%, can the Celtics survive the high level of competition in the postseason? And it's not like Boston can simply replace him. Sure, Tatum can carry the load in some games, but Brown is the defensive and emotional engine of this team. If he's limited, the entire system starts to fall apart. Is Boston being transparent about Brown's condition? Here's a topic that few people are talking about. The Celtics have a history of downplaying injuries. Just look at the Robert Williams situation in 2022. The team insisted he could play in the playoffs with an unstable knee. The result? He was never the same player again. If the Celtics are minimizing the seriousness of Brown's injury, it could cost them a championship. And this wouldn't be the first time an NBA franchise made this mistake. The Warriors did the same thing with Kevin Durant in 2019, and the result was a torn Achilles. Is it worth repeating that mistake? If Brown is truly dealing with persistent pain, he needs to be protected now. The Celtics have one of the best records in the league and can afford to rest him. But here's the dilemma. The team still needs to secure home court advantage for the playoffs. So what's more important, risking Brown now or potentially losing him when it matters most? If this injury is more serious than the team is letting on, we might be witnessing a disaster waiting to happen. It's something Celtics fans need to keep a close eye on. Can the Celtics still win it all without Brown? The good news is that even without Brown, the Celtics have a deep roster. Jason Tatum can take on more responsibility. Derek White and Jrue Holiday can cover some of the defensive impact, and Kristaps Porzingis brings another offensive dimension. But without Brown, are the Celtics still the title favorites? Honestly, it's hard to say. Last year, Brown was crucial in defending Luka Doncic and in the finals against the Mavericks. He didn't just guard some of the best players in the league, he also played a vital role in the team's offensive creation. If the playoffs started today and Brown wasn't at full strength, could the Celtics get past a fully healthy Milwaukee Bucks team? Or a red-hot Denver Nuggets squad? If Brown is only playing at 70%, is that good enough? Or is this a risk Boston simply can't afford to take? Looking at the competition, Nikola Jokic is playing at an unstoppable level in Denver. Giannis Antetokounmpo is hungry for revenge in Milwaukee, and even emerging teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder could make Boston's path to the title much harder. To overcome all of that, the Celtics need a fully healthy Brown. And there's another factor, the psychological impact. If Brown isn't 100%, how does that affect the team's confidence? Jason Tatum has already faced criticism for not being clutch enough. If he has to carry the team alone, that narrative will come back in full force.